Alright, so we're just going to do a quick look at the actual video here of the Sony A7IV versus the iPhone 13 mini versus the GoPro Hero 8. So what we're looking for here is really the stabilization aspect of it. So that's really what I want to compare, and we're just going to look at the content here back and forth. So first thing off the bat is the stabilization looks pretty similar, and the footage on the left has gone through Catalyst Browse and is at about a 0.09% crop in. So not too much, but you can see the footage just in general. Like if we paused it here for a second, we can see like how much sharper it is on the iPhone. Now, the thing is, I had the Sony A7IV in auto, so it's not super quick when it comes to just moving around. It's pretty quick when things are stabilized and when you're standing still, and it does well autofocusing for certain shots of people, and I see that mostly working well. The other thing is that you see a lot of the HDR, so a lot more punchy from the iPhone. So when I'm running here, you can see the background where the sky is still blue, whereas the colors from the Sony A7IV are washed out, which is a little bit interesting as well. And the other thing is that with the Sony A7IV, you see it cropped in a bit more. So here's just the footage out of the A7IV, and we'll compare it to the GoPro, which will be on the right side. And when you look at these, it's very, very interesting because when you're moving left and right, you can actually see what the GoPro is doing stabilization wise, because it's electronic and it sort of wobbles the image. It takes, all of the sensor, and then it shows a little bit of a cropped in portion of it and what it thinks you want. And it does a really good job with this. You also see how much sharper it is on the GoPro than it is on the Sony A7IV. Now, there's a lot of different settings on the Sony A7IV to probably get footage to look better on this. You can also shoot in log versions as well, so that you can possibly get more punchy colors out of it. Now, I typically shoot straight out of the camera, so I just let the camera do its thing. I think the footage here, you can see also on the GoPro is a lot more punchy because it has GoPro colors on it. Now, this is also something interesting here. Stabilization again on the GoPro is amazing. When you look at the Sony A7IV, it's doing a much better job than it would naturally. So next I'm going to show you a clip of the stabilized footage versus the non-stabilized footage, and you can probably tell the difference already. Right side is not stabilized and the left side is stabilized. So you can see just by using IBIS, so in-body stabilization from the Sony A7IV, how much different it is just by looking at the footage here. So it's the same clip, and one's gone through Catalyst Browse and the other one has not. So you can see just from walking around how unstable it is. So there's no lens stabilization on this camera, or this lens specifically. So I imagine if you had lens stabilization as well as IBIS, you probably get a much better image just straight out the bat. Lens stabilization apparently is much better than image stabilization, but using Catalyst Browse, it's nice to know that you can get somewhat of a decent image here. Now, if I pause this really quick here, I've been told that if you actually look at the footage after going through Catalyst Browse, the image looks much worse coming out of Catalyst Browse. And just by looking at this, that is a bit true here. So I would say really only use this in the pinch, and you probably don't want to run and gun with this camera unless you go into Catalyst Browse. So when walking around, it's probably not something you want to do. And when I do this running test, it's very, very evident one is stabilized versus the other one not being very stabilized. But with that said, I think that's really good tell, and it makes this a bit more versatile. But the issue that I see mostly with this is that the main issue is that you take more processing time. So I want the footage like out the gate, not having to really do anything. So, that's sort of my main issue and my main complaints with this particular lens and camera setup. So might want to try the stabilized lens. I think there's a 16 to 35. They have a separate lens which is an f4, so it's not an f2.8, which is not as great in terms of taking photos, but I think an f4 is fine if you're shooting wide. But just in general, if it can stabilize the footage better. Also, this Tamron 17 and 28 it's lighter, so that's the other thing. But yeah, I think the footage that you can get from this is pretty decent. I think if you have a subject in frame and you're stabilizing the footage, then it works a little bit better. Also, if you're shooting active too, the footage from that actually looks a little bit better, but after processing it through Catalyst Browse, the footage just looks like almost unusable because the GoPro footage and the iPhone 13 mini footage looks better than it. It looks sharper and it keeps most of the things in focus. Now, the GoPro is meant to do that. It's not a fixed focus, so basically, apparently everything is technically out of focus, and then you turn on sharpening to high, medium, or low based on how digitally sharp you want it to be. And it works somewhat similar to the iPhone too. There's a lot of HDR going on with the iPhone, and it makes it good and bad at the same time. It really just depends on what your particular like is. I think, for me, if I'm running and gunning and I'm just shooting a vlog or something like that, you want that to be portable. You want that to be pretty inconspicuous. So I think some of the products from Hollylands may help with this in just doing a direct plug into the phone and getting good audio quality. On the flip side of that, the GoPro Hero 8, the audio quality is pretty good, but I would want it to be a little bit better and some way to also block the wind as well, because it doesn't really do a great job with that. But with that said, thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.